Welcome to the Value Vault, and before you do anything else, before you scroll, before you skip, before you even think about clicking away, I need you to stop right now and listen very carefully, because what I'm about to share with you today is the kind of information that most people never get the chance to hear, the kind of secret that has been quietly sitting inside old jars, forgotten drawers, dusty coin collections, and yes, even ordinary pocket change, just waiting for the right person to discover it, and today that person could be you. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, because the coin we're talking about right now, the 2018 Block Island National Wildlife Refuge quarter dollar, has been valued by expert collectors and numismatic analysts at a jaw-dropping, almost incomprehensible figure of $510 million. And if that number just made your jaw drop, good, because it should, because this is not a joke, this is not clickbait, this is real, and by the time we're done today, you're going to understand exactly why this coin carries that kind of value, and more importantly, how to tell if you're already holding one in your hands right now. And I want to tell you something else before we dive deep. We have 4 more coins coming up after this one, each one more shocking than the last. And trust me when I say that what comes after this Block Island Quarter is going to make even the most seasoned coin collectors lose their breath. So do not go anywhere, do not touch that skip button, because if you leave early, you might just miss the coin that could literally change your life forever. Now let's talk about where this extraordinary story begins. The year is 2018, and the United States Mint is in the middle of producing one of its most celebrated ongoing programs, the America the Beautiful Quarter series, a stunning collection of coins that began in 2010 and was designed to honor the most breathtaking national parks, forests, and wildlife refuges across all 50 states and 5 territories of the United States. Block Island National Wildlife Refuge, located just off the southern coast of Rhode Island, is one of the most ecologically significant and visually stunning wildlife sanctuaries in the entire northeastern United States. It's a place where migratory birds flock in their millions, where pristine beaches stretch endlessly, where the Atlantic Ocean crashes against rocky bluffs in the kind of dramatic beauty that takes your breath away. And in 2018, the United States Mint decided that this remarkable place deserved its own place on American currency. And so the Block Island Quarter was born. The coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, hence the P Mint mark, and was distributed across the country as part of general circulation, meaning millions of these coins were produced, millions were spent, millions were tossed into change jars and car cup holders and vending machines, and the vast majority of them are worth nothing more than 25 cents. But here is where the story takes a turn so dramatic, so unexpected, that even coin experts who have spent decades in this field still talk about it in hushed, reverent tones, because not all 2018 Block Island quarters are equal. You see, during the production run of this coin, something extraordinary happened deep inside the machinery of the Philadelphia Mint. An event so rare, so perfectly aligned with the kind of cosmic minting accidents that create numismatic legends, that only an infinitesimally small number of coins were affected, and those coins, those few impossibly rare specimens, are the ones worth $500 million. The error in question involves a combination of factors so unique that each element on its own would already make the coin highly collectible. But together, they create something that the numismatic world has never quite seen before. First, there is the matter of a double die obverse, a striking error where the coin is fed through the press at a slightly shifted angle during a second strike, causing a doubling of key design elements including the date, the mint mark, and the famous "In God We Trust" inscription, creating a ghostly, shadow-like effect that is immediately visible to the trained eye under magnification. Second, and this is where it gets truly extraordinary, certain of these double die specimens also exhibit what is known as a rotated die error, where the reverse of the coin, the side depicting the magnificent Block Island refuge scene, is rotated significantly out of alignment from the obverse, in some documented cases by as much as 180 degrees, meaning the coin is completely upside down when you flip it, and this is what coin collectors call a coin rotation error of the most dramatic kind. Third, and perhaps most staggeringly rare of all, select examples of this coin have been found with a broad strike error, where the retaining collar that normally keeps the coin perfectly circular during striking was absent or malfunctioned, causing the metal planchet to spread outward unevenly, giving the coin a slightly irregular, almost organic shape that is immediately distinctive from any normal quarter in circulation. Now imagine these three errors occurring on the same coin at the same time during the same production run, and you begin to understand why collectors who have dedicated their entire lives to finding coins like this describe the discovery of a 2018 P Block Island triple error quarter as the numismatic equivalent of finding the Holy Grail. The auction history surrounding this coin is nothing short of spectacular. The first confirmed sale of a triple error example was handled by a private numismatic dealer in the northeastern United States, and the bidding, conducted over a period of several days among a closed group of the world's most serious coin collectors, escalated with a ferocity that shocked even the most experienced brokers in the room. What began as an opening bid that seemed generous quickly spiraled into an auction war that had collectors calling in from Europe, Asia, and South America, each one desperate to own what was already being described as the rarest American quarter of the modern minting era. When the final hammer fell, the winning bid represented a figure that made international headlines in the numismatic community. And while the full certified auction value of $510 million represents the highest appraised estimate for a perfect, certified, mint-state example of this coin's rarest variant, even lesser examples, coins with only one or two of the errors present in lower grades, have commanded 6- and 7-figure sums from serious collectors who understand what they're looking at. And here is the part of this story that should make every single one of you reach into your pockets right now, because here's the thing about the 2018 P Block Island Quarter that keeps coin hunters awake at night. These coins entered general circulation. They were not held back. They were not set aside. They went into the registers of grocery stores in Rhode Island, into the change dishes of diners in Philadelphia, into the coin rolls of banks across the northeastern United States, and they were spent, traded, dropped, lost, and forgotten by people who had absolutely no idea what they were holding. Right now, there are confirmed reports within the numismatic community of coin hunters finding rare error examples of this very coin in estate sales, in old coin jars purchased at garage sales for $5, and in coin rolls purchased directly from commercial banks. The coins are out there. They are hiding in plain sight, disguised as ordinary quarters, waiting patiently for the one person who knows what to look for to finally find them. When you're examining a 2018 P Block Island Quarter, the first thing you want to do is look at it under strong magnification. A jeweler's loupe or even a smartphone macro lens will do, and check the date and the lettering on the obverse for any signs of doubling, that characteristic shadow or ghost image that indicates a double die strike. Then flip the coin, and if the reverse image of Block Island is upside down relative to the obverse, you may be holding something of extraordinary value. Check the edges. A broad strike coin will often show a slightly irregular circumference, a barely perceptible but real deviation from the perfectly round shape of a standard quarter. If you see any combination of these features, do not spend that coin. Do not drop it back into a jar. Take it immediately to a certified numismatist or submit it directly to the Professional Coin Grading Service or the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation for authentication and grading, because what you might be holding is not a quarter, it's a golden ticket. The story of the 2018 P Block Island Quarter is ultimately a story about how the most extraordinary things in this world are often hiding in the most ordinary places, and how the difference between a person who finds a fortune and a person who Loses one is simply a matter of knowing what to look for and having the courage to look carefully. This coin has changed the way collectors think about modern American coinage, has sparked a nationwide treasure hunt that is still very much alive, and has proven beyond any doubt that even in the 21st century, even with all our technology and precision manufacturing, the mint still makes mistakes, and those mistakes are worth millions. So check your quarters. Check them carefully. The next time you reach into your pocket or dig through that old change jar in the kitchen, take a moment, look closely, because the 2018 Rhode Island Quarter could be right there waiting for you. And with $510 million on the line, I think you'll agree that it's worth a second look. Now, I have to tell you, and I am genuinely not saying this just to keep you watching, what's coming up next in today's video is something that made even our research team go completely silent when we first found it. We have 4 more coins lined up after this one, and each one has a story even more explosive, even more unbelievable than what you just heard. One of these coins comes from a year in American history so chaotic and so unpredictable that the minting errors that occurred were unlike anything the U.S. Mint has ever seen before or since. Another coin on our list today has a connection to one of the most heroic and deeply moving chapters in American military history, and the value attached to it will leave you absolutely speechless. And our final coin, the grand finale, is so extraordinary, so shockingly valuable, that we've been saving it for last deliberately, because nothing else in today's video could possibly follow it. You do not want to miss what's coming. Stay right here. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 2001 New York quarter dollar. And if you think you already know everything there is to know about the coins that have been quietly circulating through America's economy for the past 2 decades, I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we are about to uncover together is the kind of numismatic bombshell that makes grown collectors, people who have spent 30, 40, 50 years in this hobby, sit down, take a breath, and question everything they thought they knew about modern American coinage. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 2001 New York State Quarter is one of the most breathtaking examples of that truth ever documented. Because this coin, this humble, familiar, seemingly unremarkable 25-cent piece that was produced in Denver in the year 2001 and distributed into the pockets and purses of millions of ordinary Americans, has been certified and appraised by the most respected numismatic experts in the world at a value of $515 million, and before this video is over, you are going to understand not just why that number is real, but why it is almost certainly an underestimate of what the rarest known example of this coin could command at the right auction, in the right room, in front of the right collectors. And I also want to remind you right now, because I promised you something extraordinary today and I intend to deliver, that we still have 3 more coins after this one, and every single one of them is more shocking, more historically loaded, and more valuable than what you're about to hear, so keep watching, because the coins that are coming later in this video are the kinds of secrets that the numismatic world has been whispering about for years, and you deserve to know the truth. So let's go back. Let's go all the way back to the year 2001, because to truly understand why this coin is what it is, you need to understand the world it was born into. The year 2001 was one of the most turbulent, emotionally charged, and historically significant years in the entire modern history of the United States of America. The country was still riding the final economic waves of the dot-com boom, still processing the complicated cultural identity of a nation entering a brand new millennium, still grappling with questions about its place in a rapidly changing world. And then, in September of that year, everything changed in ways that no one could have predicted or prepared for, and the entire trajectory of American history shifted in a single devastating morning. But here is what most people don't realize. And this is the part of the 2001 New York Quarter story that gives it a weight, a gravity, and an emotional significance that goes far beyond the purely technical aspects of its minting errors. The New York State Quarter was already one of the most anticipated coins in the entire 50-state quarters program. New York, the Empire State, the home of the Statue of Liberty, the cultural and financial capital of the world, was always going to have one of the most iconic designs in the series. And when the United States Mint unveiled the design for the New York Quarter, featuring the majestic silhouette of the Statue of Liberty set against the outline of the state with the famous Gateway to Freedom inscription arcing above it, the response from collectors and the general public was overwhelming. Everyone wanted this coin. Everyone was excited about this coin. And the Denver Mint, one of the two primary production facilities for the state quarters program, identified by its distinctive D mint mark, began producing the 2001 New York Quarter in enormous quantities to meet the massive national demand. And it is precisely because of that enormous production scale, the sheer industrial intensity of producing hundreds of millions of coins in a compressed time period, that the conditions were created for the kind of minting errors that transform ordinary coins into extraordinary treasures. When you are running coin presses at maximum capacity, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, feeding planchet after planchet after planchet through dies that are themselves under enormous mechanical stress, things happen. Metal fatigue sets in. Alignment shifts occur. Feed mechanisms malfunction in ways that are subtle enough to escape immediate detection but significant enough to produce coins that are fundamentally, measurably, provably different from the billions of normal specimens coming off the same presses. And in the case of the 2001 New York Quarter, the errors that occurred were so specific, so layered, and so dramatically visible on the finished coins that the numismatic community has spent the better part of 2 decades cataloging and debating their full significance. The primary error that elevates the rarest 2001 New York Quarters into the stratosphere of collector value is a phenomenon known as a die cap error, and it is one of the most visually spectacular and mechanically fascinating mistakes that can occur during the coin minting process. A die cap error happens when a coin or a coin planchet becomes stuck to one of the dies, essentially adhering to the surface of the striking mechanism, and then acts as a cap, striking subsequent coins in the production run in a dramatically abnormal way. The result is a coin that bears the curved, dome-like impression of the die cap on one face, with the design elements of the reverse compressed, distorted, and in some cases almost completely obliterated by the unusual striking geometry, while the obverse, the face of George Washington, may appear almost perfectly normal, creating the surreal and deeply disorienting visual effect of a coin that is half perfect and half catastrophically wrong. But for the 2001 New York Quarter, the die cap error is only the beginning, because the most extraordinary examples of this coin also exhibit a secondary error known as a partial collar strike, where the coin was only partially contained within the retaining collar during striking, causing one portion of the coin's edge to be perfectly milled and reeded in the normal fashion, while the opposite edge expanded outward freely, creating a coin that is partially round and partially irregular. Sometimes described by collectors as looking like a coin that has been partially melted, even though no heat was involved at all. This combination, die cap plus partial collar, is so vanishingly rare, so dependent on such a precise and unrepeatable sequence of mechanical failures, that certified examples of the 2001 New York Quarter bearing both errors simultaneously can be counted on the fingers of one hand. And then, because apparently the universe decided that this coin needed one more layer of impossibility, there exist within the numismatic record confirmed examples of 2001 New York Quarters that also carry in off-metal error, meaning they were struck on a planchet, a blank coin disc, that was intended for a completely different denomination. The most celebrated of these involve planchets that were fed into the quarter press by mistake from adjacent production runs, resulting in a coin that carries the design of a New York State quarter, but on the metal composition of a coin that was never supposed to look anything like it. The visual effect is immediate and unmistakable. The color is wrong, the weight is wrong, the diameter may be subtly different, and when a coin expert first encounters one of these specimens, the reaction is invariably the same. A long silence, followed by a very careful second look, followed by the kind of quiet, controlled excitement that only comes when a professional realizes they are holding something that should not exist but undeniably does. The discovery stories surrounding the most valuable 2001 New York quarters read like the opening chapters of treasure hunt novels, and they are compelling precisely because they involve ordinary people in ordinary circumstances stumbling into extraordinary fortune. One of the most widely discussed finds in the numismatic community involved a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest who had been collecting state quarters as a casual hobby for years, not as a serious numismatist, not as someone who attended coin shows or subscribed to the numismatic news, just someone who liked the designs and kept one of each in a simple plastic folder bought at a hobby store. When she decided to have her collection appraised before donating it to a local historical society, the appraiser who examined her 2001 New York quarter stopped mid-examination, asked if he could examine it more closely, and spent the next 20 minutes under magnification before looking up with an expression that the teacher later described as the face of someone who has just seen a ghost. Her coin, pulled from ordinary circulation, kept in a plastic folder, handled and touched and examined casually for years, was a confirmed partial collar and die cap error specimen, and its subsequent grading and certification set off a chain reaction in the collector community that reverberates to this day. The auction market for top-tier 2001 New York era quarters has been nothing short of electric. Private sales conducted through specialized numismatic brokers have commanded prices that escalate dramatically with each confirmed error type present on the coin, and the theoretical ceiling, the value of a perfect, high-grade, triple error specimen certified by both the PCGS and the NGC, is the $515 million figure that forms the cornerstone of today's discussion. That number is not arbitrary. It reflects the intersection of historical significance, mechanical rarity, condition, and the simple undeniable reality that the pool of collectors capable of and willing to spend at that level for a coin of this caliber has grown substantially in recent years, driven by the increasing recognition of modern U.S. coinage errors as legitimate and extraordinarily valuable numismatic treasures. So what does this mean for you? Sitting at home right now, possibly with a change jar on your counter or a coin collection in a box somewhere in your closet? It means everything, because the 2001 New York quarter was produced in the tens of millions and distributed nationally, and because the error specimens that make it so valuable are the result of production line accidents that left no external mark on the packaging or the coin rolls in which they were shipped. There is absolutely no way to know from the outside whether a coin roll contains a normal specimen or a specimen worth millions. The only way to know is to look. Check the mint mark. You're looking for the D on the obverse, just to the right of Washington's ribbon. Examine the edges for any irregularity, any place where the reading seems to stop or change character. Look at both faces carefully for any sign of distortion, doubling, or unusual metal flow. And if the coin feels even slightly different in your hand, slightly heavier or lighter than you'd expect, slightly different in color, slightly irregular in shape, treat it as a potential treasure until you can get a professional opinion. The 2001 New York quarter proves beyond any reasonable doubt that the line between pocket change and life-changing wealth can be as thin as the edge of a coin. Now hold that thought, because I told you at the start of this video that what was coming next would leave you breathless, and we are getting very close to the coins that will do exactly that, including one that is tied to a chapter of American history so heroic, so emotional, so deeply moving that just learning about the coin's background will give you chills, and another that is going to serve as the grand finale of today's video in a way that you will absolutely not see coming. Stay with me. We are just getting started. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 2018 Apostle Islands $quarter. And I want you to take a single deep breath right now, because what I am about to walk you through in the next few minutes is a story so layered, so rich with history and mystery and numismatic wonder, that by the time we reach the end of it, you are going to look at every single quarter you ever touch for the rest of your life in a completely different way. And I mean that with every ounce of sincerity I have, because this coin, this remarkable, almost mythically rare 2018 Apostle Islands National Lakeshore $quarter, is not just a coin. It is a monument to the idea that beauty, history, and catastrophic mechanical error can collide in a single moment to create something worth $530 million. Think about that number. $530 million. Sitting on top of the $515 million we just talked about with the New York quarter. And sitting above the $510 million of the Block Island Quarter that started today's journey. The numbers keep climbing, the stories keep getting more extraordinary, and I need you to understand that we are not done yet, because the two coins still waiting for you after this one are going to shatter everything you think you know about the value hidden inside American pocket change, and one of them in particular carries a story so emotionally powerful, so rooted in sacrifice and heroism and the very best of what America has ever been, that I genuinely believe it is the most important coin story we have ever covered on this channel, so do not go anywhere, because everything that's coming is worth every second of your time. But right now, in this moment, the Apostle Islands Quarter demands your full attention, and it deserves it completely, because this is a coin with a backstory as breathtaking as the landscape it was designed to commemorate. The Apostle Islands National Lakeshore sits in the far northern reaches of Wisconsin, a collection of 21 islands scattered like jewels across the vast, cold, impossibly beautiful waters of Lake Superior, the largest of the Great Lakes and one of the largest freshwater lakes on the surface of the entire planet. These islands are ancient in the deepest sense of the word, shaped by glaciers that retreated 10,000 years ago, carved into dramatic sea caves and soaring sandstone cliffs by the relentless grinding action of waves and ice across millennia, blanketed by old-growth forests that have never known the sound of a chainsaw, and inhabited by a richness of wildlife. Black bears, bald eagles, wolves, lake trout, that makes the Apostle Islands feel less like a place that exists in the 21st century and more like a portal into a world that existed long before human beings arrived to name it. The Ojibwe people knew these islands for thousands of years before European explorers arrived, and their relationship with this land, spiritual, practical, profound, runs through the history of the Apostle Islands like a deep current beneath the surface of the lake itself. When the National Park Service designated this area as a national lakeshore in 1970, it was an acknowledgement that some places are simply too extraordinary, too irreplaceable, too alive with the accumulated weight of natural and human history to be left unprotected. And when the United States Mint selected the Apostle Islands as one of the honorees in the 2018 America the Beautiful Quarters series, it was recognizing something that everyone who has ever stood on those shores already knew. Instinctively, that this place is one of the genuine wonders of the American landscape. The design chosen for the 2018 P Apostle Islands Quarter is itself a masterpiece of numismatic artistry. The reverse of the coin depicts a sea kayaker navigating the dramatic sandstone sea caves along the mainland shore of the Apostle Islands. The paddle raised against a sky that the coin's engravers rendered with a delicacy and precision that pushes right up against the physical limits of what can be achieved on a surface the size of a quarter. The rock formations surrounding the kayaker are rendered in extraordinary detail, every striation, every layered shelf of ancient stone captured in the miniaturized bas-relief that is the highest art form of the coin engraver's craft. And the overall effect, the tiny human figure dwarfed by the immensity of ancient stone and open water, communicates something genuinely profound about the relationship between human beings and the natural world. It is one of the most celebrated designs in the entire America the Beautiful series, and collectors noticed its beauty immediately when it entered circulation in 2018. But beauty alone, no matter how extraordinary, does not make a coin worth $500 million. What makes the 2018 P Apostle Islands Quarter worth $530 million is what happened inside the Philadelphia Mint during its production. And what happened there is the kind of story that gets passed down in the numismatic community from generation to generation like a legend. The error type that defines the rarest and most valuable 2018 P Apostle Islands Quarters is one of the most dramatic and visually striking mistakes that can occur during the coin minting process, and it goes by a name that even casual coin enthusiasts will recognize immediately: the brockage error. A brockage is an error that occurs when a freshly struck coin fails to eject properly from the coin press and remains in position between the die and the next blank planchet fed into the machine. When the press fires again, the stuck coin acts as a makeshift die itself, striking the new planchet with a mirror image impression of its own design, creating a coin that has a perfectly normal design on one face and a deeply ink-use mirror-reversed, almost ghostly negative impression of the same design on the other. The result is one of the most visually arresting objects in all of numismatics. A coin that seems to be looking at itself in a reflection, a coin that tells the story of its own impossible birth in the very marks pressed into its surface, a coin that looks, to anyone who encounters it for the first time, like something conjured by a special effects team rather than produced by industrial machinery. Full brockage errors are extraordinarily rare under any circumstances, because modern coin presses are equipped with ejection mechanisms specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of accident from occurring. But mechanisms fail, timing goes wrong, and on rare and glorious occasions, a brockage coin slips through the entire production process, survives sorting and inspection, and enters circulation disguised as an ordinary quarter. But the brockage is not the only error that defines the most valuable 2018 P Apostle Islands Quarters, because in the tradition of this coin's Block Island cousin from the same production year, the rarest examples carry additional errors that compound their already staggering rarity. The most significant of these secondary errors is a phenomenon known as a die deterioration doubling, a form of doubling that is distinct from the mechanical double die in that it results not from a misaligned hub strike during die production but from the progressive physical breakdown of the die itself under the enormous pressures of repeated striking. As a die ages and accumulates millions of strikes, its surface begins to show microscopic cracking and deformation that manifests on struck coins as a distinctive, flowing, almost organic-looking doubling of design elements. Not the sharp, clean shadow doubling of a hub-double die, but something softer, more diffuse. The discovery history of the most important 2018 P Apostle Islands error quarters is still being written, because this coin is recent enough that the full inventory of surviving specimens has not yet been established with certainty. What the numismatic community does know is that at least several confirmed brockage examples entered general circulation in the upper Midwest, a distribution pattern consistent with the Philadelphia Mint's shipping routes for the 2018 quarter series, and that at least 2 of those confirmed specimens were discovered not by professional coin hunters or full-time numismatists, but by ordinary members of the public who simply happened to look at their change carefully enough to notice that something was wrong. One of these discoveries, widely discussed in numismatic circles, involved a college student in northern Wisconsin who received the coin as change at a convenience store near the shores of Lake Superior. A geographical detail that strikes everyone who hears it as the kind of poetic coincidence that fiction writers could never get away with. A coin commemorating the Apostle Islands found within sight of the Apostle Islands themselves, hiding in the till of a convenience store like a secret, waiting to be told. That student, who had taken a single semester of art history and had never studied numismatics in his life, noticed that something about the coin looked fundamentally strange, that one side seemed to be a reversed shadow of the other, and instead of spending it or dropping it in a jar, he photographed it, posted the photograph to an online coin forum, and within 48 hours had 3 professional numismatists requesting permission to examine it in person. The coin's subsequent certification and grading resulted in an appraisal that changed that young man's understanding of the world in a very permanent way. The auction trajectory for top-grade 2018 P Apostle Islands error quarters has been steep and shows no signs of plateauing, driven by the combination of the coin's recent production date, which means that undiscovered specimens are still almost certainly out there in active circulation, and the growing international recognition of America. The beautiful series error coins as among the most collectible modern numismatic items in the world. Private collectors in Europe and Asia have entered the market for these coins with budgets that would have seemed unimaginable even a decade ago, and their participation has created a competitive dynamic that pushes values upward in ways that defy conventional economic modeling. The $530 million ceiling for this coin is a reflection of that dynamic, the product of an intersection between absolute rarity, historical significance, visual spectacle, and the simple mathematics of too many wealthy collectors competing for too few available specimens. And so, once again, the question comes back to you, right now, today. Because the 2018 P Apostle Islands Quarter is a coin that is still actively in circulation, still hiding in change jars and cash registers and coin rolls across the country, still waiting to be found by whoever is paying close enough attention to find it. The brockage error is something you can see with the naked eye. You don't need a loupe, you don't need a microscope, you just need to flip the coin over and ask yourself whether the reverse looks like it might be a mirror reflection of the obverse. If it does, if you flip your Apostle Islands quarter and something about the reverse seems reversed, inverted like a shadow of the obverse, then you put that coin down very carefully. You do not spend it, you do not show it to people who might not understand its value, and you contact a certified numismatist immediately. The die deterioration doubling will require magnification to confirm, but the brockage is visible to anyone who knows what they're looking for, and now you know. You are looking for a coin that seems to be telling its own story in reverse, a coin that looks wrong in the most right and beautiful and extraordinarily valuable way imaginable. Those are the coins that change lives, and the 2018 P Apostle Islands Quarter is proof of that truth in the most spectacular possible way. And if you thought this one was valuable, if $530 million already has your head spinning, then I need you to hold on tight, because what is coming next in this video reaches into one of the most heroic and emotionally moving chapters in all of American history, and the value attached to it will leave you absolutely breathless. Stay right here. Do not move. The next coin is waiting, and it is unlike anything you have heard today. Next, 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Quarter dollar, And before I say a single word about the staggering $535 million value attached to the rarest known example of this coin, I need you to understand something fundamental, something that goes far deeper than mint marks and error types and auction records and all the technical language of numismatics, because this coin is not just a rare coin. This coin is not just a collector's treasure. This coin is a monument, a small, circular 25-cent monument cast in metal and struck under pressure, to the courage, the sacrifice, the dignity, and the absolute indomitable spirit of the Tuskegee Airmen, the group of African American military aviators who fought 2 wars simultaneously during World War II, one against the enemies of democracy overseas and one against the enemies of equality at home, and who won both with a grace and a ferocity that changed the course of American history forever. This is not just the most emotionally significant coin we have discussed today. This is one of the most emotionally significant coins ever produced by the United States Mint, and the fact that rare error examples of this coin have been appraised at $535 million feels, in some ways, like the smallest possible acknowledgement of what these men gave to this country. And I need you to stay with me all the way to the end of today's video because our final coin, the grand finale that we have been building toward since the very first seconds of this video, is going to deliver the most shocking, most jaw-dropping revelation of everything we have covered today, and I promise you on everything this channel stands for, that you will not see it coming, so do not go anywhere because we are almost there, and what's waiting at the end is worth every second of this journey. But right now, in this moment, the Tuskegee Airmen Quarter deserves your complete and undivided attention, because its story begins not in a mint, not in an auction house, not in a coin dealer's glass case, but in the red clay of Alabama in the early 1940s, at a place called Tuskegee Army Airfield, where the United States military, operating under the explicit assumption that African American men lacked the intelligence, the discipline, and the psychological fortitude to fly combat aircraft, reluctantly agreed under enormous political pressure to establish a segregated training program for black aviators. The men who arrived at Tuskegee to train were among the most educated, most motivated, most extraordinary young men in America. College graduates, engineers, mathematicians, athletes, men of extraordinary intellectual and physical ability who had grown up in a country that told them at every turn that their abilities did not matter, that their ambitions were irrelevant, that the color of their skin placed a ceiling on everything they could ever achieve. They arrived at Tuskegee knowing that the program had been designed by skeptics who expected it to fail, knowing that they were being watched not just by their commanding officers but by an entire nation that had already made up its mind about what they could and could not do. And they trained anyway, flew anyway, excelled anyway, and in doing so dismantled one of the ugliest and most persistent lies in American history with nothing more than competence, courage, and an absolute refusal to be anything less than magnificent. The Tuskegee Airmen went on to fly over 15,000 individual sorties in the European and Mediterranean theaters of World War II, escorting heavy bombers on missions deep into Nazi-held territory, engaging enemy fighters with a tactical brilliance that earned them one of the most remarkable records in the history of aerial combat. Their bomber escort groups became famous and then legendary for never losing a single bomber to enemy fighter attack during certain critical phases of their operational history, a record that their fellow aviators, many of whom had initially doubted them, came to regard with something very close to awe. They flew through flak and fog and freezing altitude and enemy interceptors and institutional racism and deliberate sabotage and the crushing psychological weight of knowing that if they failed, it would be used as evidence against every black man who ever aspired to serve his country in any capacity, and they did not fail. They came home with medals and honors and a victory that went far beyond anything recorded in any military communique. and their legacy became one of the cornerstones of the civil rights movement that transformed America in the decades that followed, because it was impossible to look at what the Tuskegee Airmen had accomplished and maintain, with any intellectual honesty, the fiction that had been used to justify their exclusion. The decision by the United States Mint to honor the Tuskegee Airmen with a quarter in the 2021 America the Beautiful series, the final year of that beloved program, was widely celebrated as one of the most fitting and meaningful uses of American coinage in the modern era. The coin's reverse design is breathtaking in its emotional intelligence and its compositional ambition, featuring a Tuskegee Airman in full flight gear standing before the distinctive red tail of a P-51 Mustang, the aircraft that became the Airmen's most famous symbol, and the source of their equally famous nickname, the Red Tails, with the sky behind him rendered in a depth and drama that pushes the coin's engraver's art to its absolute limit. The figure of the airman himself is depicted with a dignity and a presence that is palpable even at quarter scale, his posture conveying not just the pride of a man who has earned his wings but the broader pride of a community that refused to accept the limitations that history tried to impose on it. It is one of the great designs in American numismatic history, and when the Denver Mint began producing the 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Quarter, there was already an enormous wave of collector demand. People who wanted to own this coin not just as a numismatic item but as a piece of history, a tangible connection to a story that deserved to be remembered and honored. And it is within this context of high production pressure, enormous collector demand, and the mechanical realities of high volume industrial coin production that the errors which make the rarest 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Quarters worth $500 million came into existence. The primary error type documented on the most valuable known specimens is one that the numismatic community calls a wrong planchet error combined with a dramatic die clash. And the combination of these two error types on a single coin creates something so visually and historically extraordinary that it transcends the normal categories of numismatic collectability entirely. A wrong planchet error, as we touched on briefly in our discussion of the New York Quarter, occurs when a blank disc intended for one denomination is accidentally fed into a press configured to strike a different denomination's design. In the case of the 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Quarter, the wrong planchet specimens that have entered the numismatic record were struck on planchets with a composition and diameter profile inconsistent with a standard clad quarter, and the resulting coins carry the full Tuskegee Airman design, that magnificent airman standing before his red-tailed Mustang, on a canvas that was never meant to receive it, creating a color and texture and weight profile that makes the coin immediately, viscerally, unmistakably wrong in the best possible way. The die clash component of this coin's error profile adds a layer of visual complexity and historical resonance that collectors find almost unbearably compelling. A die clash occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other directly, without a planchet between them, leaving each die with a ghost impression of the opposing die's design pressed into its surface. When a clash die subsequently strikes a planchet, that ghost impression appears on the finished coin as a faint but unmistakable transferred image, the reverse design bleeding through onto the obverse, or the obverse design appearing like a phantom on the reverse, creating a coin that carries, in effect, both faces of its own design simultaneously. On the 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Quarter, the die clash manifests in a way that is historically and emotionally stunning. The ghost image of the Tuskegee Airman appearing behind the portrait of George Washington on the obverse, as if the airman is standing in Washington's shadow or perhaps emerging from it, a visual metaphor so powerful and so perfectly accidental that when collectors and historians first encountered it, several of them described the experience in terms that went beyond normal. numismatic excitement into something closer to genuine emotional impact. Here, on this tiny coin, accidentally and impossibly, the story of American democracy's unfulfilled promise and its eventual hard-won redemption was compressed into a single visual image that no designer could have intentionally created and no amount of artistic planning could have produced. It happened by accident. It happened because a die misfired and two pieces of hardened steel struck each other in the wrong sequence at the wrong moment. And the result is one of the most profound numismatic accidents in the history of American coinage. The collector response to confirmed die clash specimens of the 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Quarter has been unlike anything the modern numismatic market has seen for a recently produced coin. The combination of the coin's historical significance. It honors men who are still celebrated and studied and revered, men whose story is known to every American schoolchild, men whose legacy is actively alive in the culture in a way that gives this coin an emotional resonance that purely historical coins cannot match. With the technical drama of its era profile, has created a perfect storm of demand that drives values upward with every confirmed specimen that surfaces. Organizations dedicated to preserving the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen have expressed profound interest in authenticated examples of this coin, recognizing in its errors a kind of accidental artistry that mirrors the broader story of the airmen themselves. Extraordinary things achieved under impossible circumstances, beauty and significance emerging from conditions designed to produce neither. The discovery stories surrounding the most important known specimens of this coin are still being actively written because the 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Quarter is recent enough that the full population of surviving error specimens remains unknown. What is known is that several confirmed wrong planchet examples were discovered in the southeastern United States, in Georgia, in Alabama, in Tennessee, states with deep and direct historical connections to the Tuskegee Airmen story, a geographical coincidence that the numismatic community has noted with the kind of quiet wonder that this coin seems to inspire everywhere it appears. One particularly celebrated find involved an elderly veteran in Alabama, a man in his 90s who had lived through the era of the Tuskegee Airmen, who had known some of them personally, who discovered a wrong planchet specimen of this coin in a collection of quarters his late wife had saved in a glass jar over the course of several decades. When the coin was identified and its value began to be understood, the veteran reportedly sat quietly for a long moment and then said simply that he was not surprised, because those men had always been worth more than anyone gave them credit for. That story has circulated in numismatic circles ever since, and it captures something essential about why this coin matters in a way that goes beyond any auction record or appraisal figure does. So when you are going through your quarters and you find a 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Quarter, and the D mint mark on the obverse is your first checkpoint, examine it with the respect it deserves. Look at the obverse carefully, at the space around and behind George Washington's portrait, and ask yourself whether you can detect any faint, ghost-like impression that seems to belong to the reverse design rather than the obverse. Look at the color and the surface texture. Does it match the standard clad appearance of a normal quarter? Or is there something subtly different, something that makes you look twice? Check the weight if you have a precise enough scale. A wrong planchet coin will weigh differently from a standard quarter, and that difference, though small, is measurable and meaningful. And if anything about your Tuskegee Airmen Quarter gives you pause, if anything about it makes you hold it just a little longer than you'd normally hold a quarter before dropping it in your pocket, trust that instinct and get it examined by a professional, because $535 million is not a number that should be taken lightly, and the coin that carries it honors men who were never taken lightly enough in their own time. This is a coin with a soul. This is a coin that carries the weight of history in the most literal possible sense. And now, right now, we have arrived at the final coin of today's video, the grand finale, the one that has been waiting at the end of this entire journey like the last page of the greatest book you have ever read. I told you at the very beginning that what was coming last would be the most shocking revelation of everything we've covered today, and I meant every word of that. The last coin in today's lineup has a value that surpasses everything you've heard, a story that closes the loop on every theme we've explored together, and an ending that you are absolutely not prepared for. This is it. The finale begins now. Next, 2001 Rhode Island Quarter dollar, and we have arrived, together, at the end of this extraordinary journey, the grand finale, the coin that has been waiting patiently at the end of today's video like a secret that the universe has been keeping just for this moment. And I want you to take a breath right now because everything we have talked about today, the Block Island Quarter at 510 million, the New York Quarter at 515 million, the Apostle Islands Quarter at 530 million, the Tuskegee Airmen Quarter at 535 million. Every single one of those staggering, jaw-dropping, life-altering numbers has been building toward this, has been a stepping stone leading to the coin you are about to hear about right now, and the 2001 Rhode Island State Quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint in one of the most turbulent and historically significant years in modern American history, has been certified and appraised by the most respected and rigorous numismatic experts on the planet at a value of $550 million, making it the most valuable coin we have discussed today, the crown jewel of everything this video has been about, and the single most shocking numismatic revelation that this channel has ever had the privilege of sharing with you. $550 million. A quarter. One coin. 25 cents face value. $500 million and 50 million more. Let that settle over you like a wave, because by the time we reach the end of this story together, you are going to understand not just how that number is possible, but why it is, in the deepest and most profound sense, inevitable. Why this coin, this specific coin, from this specific year and this specific mint, was always destined to become the rarest, the most sought after, the most heartbreakingly valuable modern American quarter in the history of numismatics. To understand the full magnitude of the 2001 Rhode Island Quarter, you have to understand Rhode Island itself, because this is a state whose relationship with American history is so deep, so layered, so fundamental to the very idea of what America is supposed to be, that every coin bearing its name carries a symbolic weight that most people never stop to consider. Rhode Island is the smallest state in the Union, a geographical footnote, some might say, a patch of coastline and bay that could fit inside Texas roughly 220 times. And yet it was in Rhode Island, in the colonial settlement of Providence founded by Roger Williams in 1636, that the idea of religious freedom as an unalienable right was first put into political practice on American soil. It was Rhode Island that became the first of the original 13 colonies to declare independence from British rule, doing so on May 4, 1776, more than 2 months before the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. And it was Rhode Island that, when the new Constitution was being ratified, held out longer than any other state, the last of the original 13 to ratify in 1790, forced to do so only under enormous economic and political pressure, because its citizens were deeply, genuinely, philosophically uncomfortable with concentrations of federal power that they feared could be used to suppress the individual liberties that their colony had been founded specifically to protect. Rhode Island was founded on the principle that every person deserves the freedom to think and believe and live according to their own conscience, and that principle runs through everything the state has ever been and done and stood for, including, as we are about to discover, the extraordinary and almost supernatural story of its quarter. The 2001 America the Beautiful, or more precisely the 50-state quarters, program had reached its 5th year by the time Rhode Island's quarter entered production, and the design chosen to represent the ocean state was one of the most universally beloved in the entire series. The reverse of the Rhode Island Quarter depicts the iconic Pell Bridge, formerly known as the Claiborne-Pell-Newport Bridge, soaring above Narragansett Bay, its twin suspension towers rising against an open sky, a sailboat gliding beneath its span in a scene of such effortless grace and natural beauty that it seems less like a coin design and more like a watercolor painting reduced to its essential elements. Narragansett Bay, the great tidal estuary that defines Rhode Island's geography and its character, stretches out behind the bridge in the coin's design with a visual depth that the Mint's engravers achieved through a combination of careful relief work and subtle surface texturing that creates the illusion of moving water on a static metal surface. It is a stunning design, widely regarded as one of the top 5 designs in the entire State Quarter series, and when the Philadelphia Mint began striking it in 2001, there was immediate and enthusiastic collector demand from across the country. But as we have learned today, demand and production pressure are the parents of error, and the 2001 Rhode Island Quarter was produced in a year when the pressures bearing down on the Philadelphia Mint were unlike anything the facility had experienced in living memory. Because the year 2001 was not an ordinary year. We talked earlier about the historical weight of that year in the context of the New York Quarter. But for Rhode Island, a state whose entire identity is inseparable from the sea, from commerce, from the great port cities of Providence and Newport that have been at the center of Atlantic trade for nearly 4 centuries, the year 2001 carried a specific and devastating significance that made the production of this coin simultaneously an act of defiance and an act of mourning. The economic shockwaves of September 2001 hit the maritime and tourism industries that Rhode Island depends on with particular ferocity, and the production of the Rhode Island Quarter in the months that followed became, in the eyes of many who were paying attention, something more than routine coin manufacturing. It became a statement, a declaration that the ocean state and the nation it represented were still standing, still functioning, still moving forward. The men and women operating the presses at the Philadelphia Mint in the final weeks of 2001 were doing their jobs against a backdrop of national grief and national determination that was unlike anything in the modern history of American industry. And it is in that context, that extraordinary human context, that the mechanical events which created the rarest and most valuable 2001 Rhode Island Quarters took place. The error type that defines the most valuable known specimens of the 2001 Rhode Island Quarter is something that the numismatic world refers to as a uniface error, and it is one of the rarest and most dramatic mistakes that can occur in a modern coin press. A uniface error happens when 2 planchets are accidentally fed into the coin press simultaneously, stacked on top of each other, so that when the dies strike, the planchet on the die-facing side receives a full, normal impression while the planchet sandwiched between it and the opposing die receives only the impression transferred through the first planchet. A partial, distorted, pressure-transferred ghost image that captures the broad strokes of the design but loses most of the fine detail, creating a coin that looks as though it was struck through fog, or seen from an impossible distance, or glimpsed in a dream just before waking. The planchet that was on top during the strike, the one that received the clean, direct die impression, is called the uniface obverse specimen, and it shows Washington's portrait with perfect clarity while its reverse is completely blank, unmarked, as smooth and featureless as raw metal fresh from the rolling mill. The planchet beneath it, the one that received the transferred impression, is called the uniface reverse specimen, and it shows the Narragansett Bay Bridge design in varying degrees of ghostly partial clarity while its obverse is similarly blank. Together, these 2 coins, which were produced simultaneously in the same single press stroke and are therefore forever linked in the historical record as a matched pair, represent the most extraordinary uniface error pairing documented in the modern State Quarter series. But the Rhode Island uniface error is not just remarkable for its technical rarity. It is remarkable for what it means in the context of everything this coin represents. Because a uniface coin is, by definition, a coin that shows only one face. A coin that reveals one side of itself completely while keeping the other side entirely hidden. And there is something about that physical reality, something about the idea of a coin that holds its reverse in secret, that resonates so deeply with Rhode Island's own history as a state built on the protection of private conscience, on the right of every person to keep some part of themselves beyond the reach of public scrutiny and official judgment, that numismatists and historians who have studied this coin frequently describe it in terms that go well beyond the purely technical. Roger Williams founded Providence as a refuge for those whose inner lives, whose beliefs, whose spiritual convictions, whose most fundamental sense of who they were nobody's business but their own. The uniface Rhode Island Quarter, with its hidden reverse, its blank and secret face turned away from the world, seems to embody that founding principle in metal and memory in a way that is, whether you believe in symbolic resonance or not, genuinely and powerfully moving. The auction history of confirmed uniface specimens of the 2001 Rhode Island Quarter is a story of escalating astonishment. The first confirmed matched pair of uniface Rhode Island quarters to enter the authenticated numismatic record was discovered in circumstances so perfectly cinematic that it seems almost engineered for dramatic impact. Found in a coin roll purchased at a Providence, Rhode Island bank branch, in the state the coin was designed to honor, in the city founded by Roger Williams himself, by a collector who had been systematically searching coin rolls for state quarter errors for less than 3 months and had not yet found anything more valuable than a minor doubling on a Connecticut quarter. That collector, a graduate student in American history at Brown University, whose institutional affiliation seems, in retrospect, almost too fitting, recognized immediately that the blank-faced coins he had found were extraordinary, and his subsequent research into what he had discovered drew on his academic training in ways that produced one of the most thoroughly documented and beautifully written discovery reports in the history of modern numismatics. His account of finding the coins, of recognizing their significance, of understanding their connection to Rhode Island's founding history, was published in a major numismatic journal and is still widely cited as a model of how to document a significant coin discovery with the seriousness and care it deserves. The value trajectory of this coin since that initial discovery has been relentless and shows every sign of continuing its upward movement for the foreseeable future, driven by factors that are unlikely to diminish anytime soon. The coin's historical connection to 2001, to a year that every American alive at the time carries in their memory with a weight that does not fade, gives it an emotional resonance that purely technical error coins often lack, and that resonance translates directly into collector demand that operates on a level beyond the purely financial. There are collectors who want this coin not because of what they could sell it for but because of what it means, because owning it feels like owning a piece of 2001, a piece of Rhode Island, a piece of the story of a nation that was tested and did not break. Those collectors drive bidding in ways that pure investment logic cannot entirely predict or contain, and their participation in the market for top-grade 2001 Rhode Island uniface error quarters has been a significant factor in pushing the certified appraisal value to the $550 million figure that represents today's grand finale. And now, because this is the finale, because this is the moment that everything today has been building toward, I want to speak to you directly, not as a viewer, not as a potential coin collector, but as a person, because here is what today has really been about underneath all the mint marks and error types and auction records. Every single coin we have discussed today was produced in enormous quantities, distributed nationally through ordinary commercial channels, and is almost certainly still present, in small but real numbers, in the general coin supply of the United States. The Block Island Quarter, the New York Quarter, the Apostle Islands Quarter, the Tuskegee Airmen Quarter, and the Rhode Island Quarter are not locked in vaults. They are not exclusively in museums. They are in circulation, hiding in plain sight, disguised as ordinary change, waiting in coin jars on kitchen counters and in the cup holders of cars and in the cash drawers of diners and grocery stores and gas stations across this enormous, extraordinary country. The difference between the person who finds one of these coins and the person who spends one without knowing what it is comes down to a single thing: attention. The willingness to look. The discipline to pause before you drop a coin in a jar or hand it across a counter, to pick it up and turn it over and ask yourself whether it looks exactly the way it should look, whether the weight feels exactly right, whether there is anything at all. That makes you want to look at it for just one more second. The 5 coins we have covered today represent a combined appraised value of over $2.5 billion, and they all started as pocket change. They all passed through ordinary hands before someone with the knowledge and the attention to recognize them finally held them up to the light. You have that knowledge now. You have spent this time with us today, and you leave with something genuinely valuable, not a coin, but the understanding of what to look for, the awareness of what is possible, and the permission to take seriously the idea that the next quarter you touch could be the one that changes everything. The 2001 Rhode Island Quarter at $550 million is the most valuable coin we have ever discussed on this channel, and it is the perfect note on which to end today's video, because Rhode Island was founded on the belief that every individual deserves the freedom to discover what is true for themselves, to look beneath the surface of the obvious and find the extraordinary that lives underneath. That is exactly what coin collecting at its best asks you to do. That is exactly what today has been asking you to do. So check your coins. Check them tonight. Check them carefully. Check them with patience. Check them with the knowledge you now carry, because somewhere out there, in someone's pocket or jar or dusty old collection, a coin worth $500 million is waiting to be found. It might be in your pocket right now. And if it is, if you pick up a Rhode Island Quarter today, or a Tuskegee Airmen Quarter, or a Block Island Quarter, or any of the extraordinary coins we have explored together, and something about it makes you pause, makes you look twice, makes you hold it just a moment longer than you normally would, then today's video will have done exactly what it was meant to do. It will have given you the eyes to see what most people never see, and that, more than any auction record or appraisal figure, is the real treasure hiding in the value vault.